Bob, we have another exciting guest with us. Very enthused and ready to have a discussion with Christopher Lee, who's here to talk about product leadership, product coaching, all types of things in that realm. So, Christopher, give us a quick intro about you, and then we'll launch into the topics.
Hi, Josh and Bob. It's a pleasure to be on here. I'm Christopher Lee. I'm a product management coach at Product Coach Labs. I was formerly with Ernst& Young Technology Consulting for their digital group and Wipro Digital. And I've spent about over the last 7 years in product management coaching and technology consulting. Bob has been a mentor of mine over probably around that same period of time. Um, and I'm also I mostly work with enterprises, but I've lately last summer I started pivoting into job search coaching, so for product management, and also I've I've gone back to working with startups as well more recently.
Thank you, Christopher. And like you said, I've known you for a while. Oh, and he's written Metacasters. He's written a book, a user storybook. He's just too humble to mention it.
No, I
So,
actually
well,
forgot. I should have led with that. I meant thank you. It's called The
it,
Art of
it's
Crafting User Stories, and it's available on Amazon, uh, hardcover and Kindle and Barnes and Noble. And also Bob is in the book as well, if you want to.
oh, that's right. I am. No pictures though, Metacasters. Just my words.
Oh, that's no
So,
fun.
It's top
so
secret
no photograph.
words.
All right.
Yeah.
That's to use to put on my WWE or WW whatever it is. Let's get it on. Let's get it on, everyone.
Oh, gosh. All right. So, Christopher, let's lead into the first area that we want to discuss. We chatted a little bit pre episode, but why don't you take us into like topic number one in this realm?
Sure. So, the topic of discussion is product leadership. And we wanted to discuss sort of what the top challenges were with product leadership. And when a client comes to me, typically an enterprise client, actually, or even a startup client, now that I think about it, but typically enterprise, I I see I see a couple of things, but one of the things that are very apparent to me is that usually the organizational leaders come to us and ask us to fix their people, and uh, usually the problem they assert is their people, and they never do point at themselves at all in that process. And it's and the structure and the hierarchy, the structure and the dynamics are very top down. And then when I go to their people and interview them, so I of course we always interview everyone. We find out that the organization itself has certain elements that are dysfunctional, or the leaders themselves are part are attributing to the challenges. So that's what we were hoping to discuss.
Yeah,
I've never seen that
Oh, have you
you
before.
never?
either, Bob? Gosh, me either.
Christopher, I
You,
I have no recollection of what you're talking about.
oh, okay.
Oh,
So you've only worked in
What
Marty Kagan's organizations.
or something similar to no, it's I mean I'm not undermining your point. I think that's a from an agile coaching point of view or from a leadership consulting point of view, that this notion of leaders lacking self-awareness, right? And looking downward, and it's a team thing, is pretty common, right? Maybe we can explore some ways to break through that. Now, that's intent, that's dangerous not only from a leadership point of view, from a product guidance point of view, right? And decision making point of view. that that could add some, I think, some impact to the organization or to the company as well. Josh, you were going to say something.
Yeah, the capability of a coach to effectively address that situation is going to be something that separates you from the rest. Number one, it's difficult. Uh, it's difficult because it requires some. There's probably some French word that Bob would use that requires some, like, you know, handling of egos and things like that aren't always a part of what we've learned to do. So this I'm excited about this because being able to effectively manage this type of situation, which all three of us have seen repeatedly, being able to handle this situation, this is the thing that creates the real change for organizations. This is the thing that helps them become who they aspire to be. Unfortunately, this doesn't get tackled or isn't tackled effectively, and there's almost no shame in that because it's really difficult. So I just want to put that out there. Like, this is real. This is insanely common. And the reason it's insanely common is because it's really hard to work through these types of things. So, okay, we've set the stage. Let's pretend we're coaching an organization and we come to the realization, Christopher, that you laid out that, oh my goodness, I think the leaders are part of the issue. Let's talk through ways to address the situation, how we can set that organization up for success and how we take them there. So thoughts, ideas on how you you would tackle that.
So the missing piece that I think that is prominent, if you will, amongst what is happening in these orgs is that there there is not one-on-one executive coaching happening um, first with these leaders. And one thing I will say is in one of the organizations that I was coaching, one of the major banks, um, that leader actually started receiving coaching, and then people started seeing small changes happening. So, um, I think that is pretty critical, um, for any sort of when you're going through any sort of transformation that with with enterprises, that the executives start to receive some sort of executive coaching, or preferably both product coaching, so that because many times you'll find that the leaders don't know even what product management is. And I think it's important, if you're going through a product management transformation, to understand the definition. I'm talking, of course, hopefully about the leaders outside of the product management org, to get that.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I've run into everywhere I've been, and this is part of the challenge with product management is that that term is so overloaded and it means many different things to many different people. So putting in the work to at least get everybody on the same page is something you have to do. Even if you believe the leaders are just perfect and they're on board, there's still a ton of value in just ensuring that across the board at this organization, when we say product management, this is what we're expecting and it's not slightly off. Because I I have yet to land in an organization where across the board there was clarity on what we meant and what the expectations were of that role and that function within the company. So that's a huge thing. Again, even if you think the leaders are perfect, still got to do it.
I think Christopher said something, or I'm going to tease it apart. I think executive coaching or leadership coaching and product coaching, and I would say it's two separate things.
Hmm.
I mean, it could be one person doing it,
Two different
but
people, I think.
yeah, but two different people. I would actually say there's two different levels of expertise.
Yes.
Like if you're doing a transformation, having someone who's deeply right, deeply skilled and deeply experienced in product, and then understands coaching, would be useful, and then someone who understands leadership and deeply experienced with that and coaching. So very often, a lot of times, I think leaders, that there or HR departments or OD, folks, they assign like a coach. But in this case, under our theme, it might be two. You might be better served to find, deep experience on both sides. And I'm not trying to overload a leader with, multiple coaches. It's just different sides of the coin that would be valuable. So I have another tool or tactic to see how you guys react. I don't actually. What I'm thinking is you don't wait until you're in and coaching. Is as part of the onboarding process, we should be challenging the leaders to identify the challenge, to the problems and the challenges to see. So this is my 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 hypothesis, and I want to see how you react. But when do you start managing their expectations? When do you start pushing back on them? When do you start saying that you might be part of the problem, Josh Anderson? So instead of just me coming in and solving world hunger at a team level for you, I think during the engagement or the contractual process is a wonderful place to poke the bear, or to coach the bear, or to see how the bear is the bear open minded, etc. What I think is a lot of coaches miss that opportunity, uh, and just dive in and coach, and then they may be challenged to figure out, well, how do I challenge the client? So I wonder if it's never too soon. Is my point. What do you guys think?
One of my friends is an executive coach, and she includes a line in her contractual agreement that says, I promise to be open and transparent and tell you, uh, everything that is going on. And then she makes sure to point that out to prospective clients before they sign. She said, are you sure you want this? And she's a very direct she's also from the East Coast. She's from rural Pennsylvania. So, but she can be very direct with clients. And uh, once she points out, what's going on, sometimes or occasionally what you'll find is that the clients fire her.
Yep.
On the other hand, my executive coach who I worked with for 6 years is from New Jersey, also from the East Coast. And she's not as direct, but she does have that line in her contract. I remember reviewing it 7 or 8 years ago, and but she looks at timing as to when to disclose information. It's called progressive. I guess you could call it progressive disclosure to the client, and finding the timing to share the news. For example, I have autism. She didn't tell me about that until uh, I would say until maybe 6 years into the. Wait, no. Sorry, maybe 4 years into the con- 3 or 4 years into the contract. I can't remember the exact date. So you might be thinking that I might be upset about that. Actually, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but uh, she did it at the right time. It was because I asked her some questions about social intelligence and then some feedback, and then that's when she offered it. Uh, so I don't know what is the right approach, whether it's one or the other or in between. But her her way seems to be effective for me. What's the phrase about a dead scrum master? So that's
Serves no value.
yeah.
It provides no value at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I've found, and this is just the approach that I prefer, I guess. One of the very first, if not the first, discussions that I have pre-agreement is I underscore the importance of the leader or leaders in the success of this transformation. And I put a lot of responsibility on their shoulders because they can quickly undermine all of the efforts that we're putting in place when, as things get difficult and employees start to not like the change. I mean, they haven't made the change because it's hard or they don't want to do it or whatever it is, but now, like, it's happening, and there will be a moment or 10 where an employee comes to the executive and says, like, hey, this is really hard. I don't think we should do this. This is ruining so and so, so and so. And that moment right there will determine the success of the transformation. Will they say, I understand, I know it's difficult, but I'm asking you to get on board because this is where we're going? Or will they just end it by saying, okay, cool, I hear you. I'll go talk to Josh and we'll back it down. So that's step one, is understanding the responsibility that they have, but also understanding that the culture is created by them, whether they like it or not. Part of the reason I'm here is because there's a cultural issue. And so to transform that culture, we have to understand who we are and who we aspire to be. And there's going to be a ton of work for you to help us lead that transformation of this culture to become the one that we aspire it to be. So I'm very upfront with both the responsibility of the success, but also the leadership that is needed for us to get from here to there. Because the last thing I want to do is have a surprise. Also, it's a bit of a test for me to figure out how effective the leaders are at receiving feedback that might not be what they want to hear. So part of it is that little test of like, okay, how are they going to handle that? Are they going to be like, are they going to fire me? And if they're going to fire me at that point, then that's actually a good thing, because the engagement isn't going to be a good one for both parties, right? Like, we'll eventually get to the situation where for us to take that next step, there are things that have to happen, and those things aren't desired to be invested in. And so then at that point, like, we've just wasted each other's time. So it's a bit of a test for me as well in having that discussion up front before we agree to anything, really.
Am I allowed to turn the tables and ask both of you questions as an interviewee? I'm now the
Yes.
No,
interviewer.
of course not.
Do you establish feedback mechanisms and conflict management within your coaching contracts? And at what point do you decide to hang in the towel, like, and say this is not going to work out? And at what point do you have, like, for example, Capital One, formerly known as ING Direct, they actually had to, when they were first doing the transformation, they had to, I believe in the technology group, they had to get rid of some of the talent because it wasn't aligning with the culture that they wanted to create. So at what point do you say these execs and these team members are not the right people and we have to get rid of them? So I asked you just 3 questions all at once. So I hope you remember all of them.
I can start and I won't. So I'm playing the H card. So I'm only going to answer one, and it may not even be one that you asked, but that's okay. It's the one I want. So how do we determine if we're the right coach for an organization, right? If we're simpatico, uh,
Mhm.
I do share, but it's not contractual. I actually don't like. There's nothing wrong with putting all the.
Mhm.
It's nothing wrong with putting that into a contract, Christopher, the way you described it. I just don't do it. What I do is I have an ethics statement. So I have some ethical conditions on a website that talk about how I'm going to show up to my clients, how I expect my clients to show up to me, what are the truth telling dynamics, right? Or whatever the communication dynamics. And I'll make sure that they are aware of that conversationally when we're getting to know each other before a contract, if that makes sense, right? Uh, then very often if I can, I'll get some observation of the organization. So I may actually bring a particular challenge into them to illustrate my style of coaching and my style of giving feedback. So I'll actually do a demo, if you will. It's just conversational. And what I'm trying to do is just let the real Bob Galen through, and this is how I'm going to show up with you, and then take it or leave it along the way. Uh, and so sometimes I can decide based on their reactions that the time it's not that they're bad or I'm bad. It's the timing. The way I think of it is the timing isn't right, and so for us to collaborate, and the timing may be right in the future. So I try to be really respectful. I may tell them exactly what I'm thinking and why. It's not from my point of view. Also, sometimes they'll give me feedback, and it's positive. Most of the time, it's actually yes, we would love to work with you, and we're ready for this. And sometimes it's not. So I don't like the contractual details. I like the more maybe we're having uh, a what I don't even know what to call it. I'm blanking on the word, but
Dialogue,
we're
conversation
we're
of sorts.
we're it's a conversation, relationship building, and we're demoing uh, what it looks like. Josh,
A couple of things. I think I can cover two of the questions. Uh, one of the things that I've found of value is I have what is effectively a sprint review on a weekly basis with the leaders, the people that hired me, to paint the picture of this is where we are, this is where we're going, this is where I'm going to need your help. This is where we need you to really lean in. Also, I ensure we dip our toes into a bit of a retrospective, right? Because what I want to hear is I want to hear from them how they're feeling, what they're concerned about, what they're frustrated about, and that creates a regular opportunity for me to do that executive coaching to try and bring them along for the ride, because it puts it on the table and it's a regular thing. It's not like a one off. It's just like, hey, this is what we do every Friday or whatever. We meet up. I have a bit of a backlog. I don't go crazy with it, but like, hey, here's the things we're trying to accomplish. This is what I'm focusing on now. This is what I'm not focusing on, which is a big thing to make them understand. Like, yes, there's this thing we're going to do, but not right now. And here's why. So that helps me understand how they're feeling. And if you establish that early, the cadence of that creates a relationship where everybody begins to feel how things are going, and then it's my responsibility to make sure that we address that. So that's how I handle, hey, like, is this like are we starting to like fall apart or whatever, or are things strong? Maybe we're coming towards the end sooner than we thought or whatever. So that's how I tackle that. Second, uh I am a massive believer in the people and the behaviors that are promoted and permitted with an organization create the culture. And so often, the organizations that I come into, there are issues within the organization, and it's known. And that's part of like, hey, Josh, we brought you in because of this. And I spend a lot of time trying to get people to just pull the trigger when they already know the answer. There have been times when I've hired or I'm hired to be a fractional CXO, and there's a pre-existing one there. And they're hopeful that I can come in and coach them up and help them become who they wish they were, who they want them to be. And oftentimes it's not that pre-existing CXO's issue. It's just they were never given a fighting chance. They never got the support. They never got the coaching. They've never done the role. The company's accelerated way faster, and it's just not fair for that person. But no one's willing to do something about it. The hard conversations, the hard discussions aren't had. So I end up spending an enormous amount of time having to be the bad guy in like, we know the answer. You know the answer. You knew the answer before you hired me. What do we need to do for you to pull the trigger? What are the levers we need to push? What are the gates we need to go through? What has to happen? Because we know the answer. We just need to do something about it. And the longer we let it linger, the harder it's going to get. So regarding if people aren't the right fit, I'm super aggressive with that because in my experience, people know the answer. They just like want somebody else to pull the trigger, right? There have been times, there have been companies where I have been asked to like fire the person. I'm like, no, I'm not. No, this is like you're the CEO. Like I'm not doing your job for you. I'll coach you through it, but I'm not going to come in and be this like
How big was
this.
that company?
It was relatively small, but
Oh,
growing like crazy, right? It was one of those things where just the executives hadn't been there yet.
like
And so this was all new to them. What's that?
500 people or something.
They were like 300, but they were going to be at 500 real quick. So yeah. So I think I got two of the questions. I don't remember the third.
I
So
actually
Well,
don't
let's not go there.
either.
That's not good. Let's take a mulligan, whatever that means. That's I don't even know if the context is right. So, Christopher, now I want to ask you a question. Damn it!
Damn.
No, you mentioned Marty Kagan earlier, and you sort of soft pedaled. I'd like to take a right turn and talk about Marty. You had some feelings in our pre-discussion about that, Marty and his work, and so you want to start that discussion a little bit?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I admire about Marty and his work. I've read all of his books and his blog posts. I follow him pretty regularly. I think it's safe to say that we're all on the same page about safe with Marty, but I'm not sure, but probably. But but one of the common I think critiques about Marty Kagan's work is that um, I don't think I don't I so basically Marty's work usually paints a very idealistic picture about what the best in class looks like. Um, but many of us um, work with clients or organizations that may not be there yet. And what I'm hoping to read in his latest book is a mod a, a sort of a practical guide as to how we can incrementally get there. And I'm not sure if that I haven't read the latest book, so I'm not sure if it provides that. I know that he's trying to get people towards in the latest book a new product management operating model. But in terms of as you the word that you used were in terms of the tactics, I'm not sure if he goes there at all. So that's one of the common critiques I've heard.
I mean, I'll take it broader and then speak specifically about Marty, but I think it's a broader consulting thing, like a big five consulting thing. There's a lot of consultants, coaches that come in with a perfect worldview of in a perfect world, this will work. Um, and then they pivot. I wrote a blog post a while back. I was just reevaluating it, where I saw what is it? Product. What was Marty's teams? What were they? Product teams or something like that,
Yeah,
or empowered product teams.
Howard.
Empowered product teams. And I followed up with a coaching client, and some of Marty's colleagues had flown in, so they paid for consulting. And what is it, Silicon Valley Program Group or whatever? They
Product group.
flew in
Yeah.
and they did some training in this organization. It was a moderately sized, maybe 500 to 1,000,
Mhm.
people, and they sort of jazzed up leadership on empowered product teams, and then they did some training at the management level. They left some documentation behind, and then they left. And it was like you're on your own. So we have these wonderful ideas, and if you have a half a brain cell, I'm exaggerating, but if you have a half a brain cell, you should be able to implement these wonderful ideas, and then we're out of here. And I see that a lot. Sometimes people will leave behind a PowerPoint deck or whatever. Here's the strategy. We've assessed you, and this is what you need to do to become agile or to become this. And the company just destroyed. I mean, they just failed at that. Now they have empowered product teams, but one of the things that Marty didn't amplify is the role that leadership plays in that. And leadership, or not Marty personally, but the consultants didn't really talk about execution dynamics and culture dynamics and things like that, and it really created a mess. And I see that on the product in his product side, but generically, I think that's true of a lot of consultants. You guys, any reactions to that?
Yeah, I got a couple. Number one, I think I'm going to change the name of my company and put Silicon Valley in it, because it seems like if you have that, you can just swing
Doesn't it
in.
sound cool?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you swing in, you say a few things, and then you walk away with like no accountability and be like, well, if you didn't do it, not my fault. I told you what to
It's
do.
not my
Yeah.
it's not my oh, real quickly. So I posted this blog, and then Marty had someone in Europe that was a colleague critique the blog. And that's basically what they were. Oh, it's not our fault. You know,
Yeah.
it's their fault. I'm sorry, Judge, but that was the thing, and they were like refuting it. I'm like, well, it's I don't know if I look at it that way. You know, the poor client. If we're looking at serving the client, you just did a disservice to your client. Sorry, Judge.
No, yeah. It's one of those things that's frustrating to me. And Christopher, I'll tell you, I am going to be the last person to quote a book or a tweet or a model. Like Bob will tell you, there's been times where he references this coaching model, and I have no idea what it is, because I struggle with practitioners or non-practitioners prescribing this is how things should work without actually putting the thing in practice. And I know my coaching journey, I certainly started in that same realm where in an ideal world, this is how it should work. And I was idealistic about how this should happen. Like, I don't understand why you people don't get it. And like you just, like Bob said, you must not have that half a brain cell that's needed to understand that. I then understood, because it was my responsibility within those jobs, the true transformation that had to happen, the effort and energy that was required to get from here to there. Now I understand why they're opting not to offer the service of, hey, we'll get you there, because it's hard and it's fraught with landmines and various things like that where things can go wrong. So it's a fantastic business model for them if they can do that. Uh, but it doesn't achieve the goals of the customers, as Bob was saying. So that's where uh, I try and focus on, like, hey, I'm here to be your shepherd. I'm here to get you across the valley, to get you to where you want to be. But I know it's going to be messy, and I know it's going to be hard, and it's fraught with danger. But I'm willing to coach people through that because that's what I enjoy. I get excitement from seeing them achieve that mission. Uh, like I said, maybe I need to alter the name of my company and the approach where I just, swing in and charge a bunch of money to drop some docs on you and say, go get them, Tiger. But that's just not who I am.
I think it's one thing to successfully execute uh the concepts and the theory that you're writing in the book in a company in Silicon Valley, a successful tech company that you've already done it at, but to transplant that into a different context, in a different geographic region, in a different industry that's never done it before, is a totally different thing. And to be able to teach it and then execute that's also another thing. So
Yeah, I sorry, I had that experience personally. So at Dude Solutions, we built this amazing process and we loved it. And companies would fly in and want to learn and see and understand it. Then our company got into a pattern of acquiring companies. And I tried to just blindly apply this process that worked great for the group that I had. Like, okay, this is how you work. This is how you work. This is how you work. And it didn't work. It was a disaster.
right.
And so I quickly learned that lesson of what's right for this group for a myriad of reasons
Mhm.
likely isn't appropriate for this group. So you're going to have to figure out, like, do you even do it at all? Do you do parts of it? What's appropriate? So even when I controlled everything, so all those companies that we acquired, all the engineering, all the product rolled up to me. So it was my responsibility to make it happen. So even when I controlled everything, it wasn't the right call. So let alone to assume that you can make this broadly applicable to everybody, like that's just not realistic because the permutations are just insane.
Are we gonna get this really long reply from someone on their team
I
on the
hope so.
podcast? I'm worried.
I don't. I mean, I'm respectful too, right? And you were.
Yeah.
So I respect Marty's work. The point we're saying, and it's not about Marty Kagan.
Hmm.
You could say you could have the same logic with Save. Dean Leffingwell and the Save folks, they deploy. It's instead of books, it's documented artifacts on a hierarchical site that's telling you how to do things, right? With a lot of intellectual property and articles and things like that. But again, the tactical execution is incredibly the situationalness, right? It
Hmm.
is very difficult for folks to get. That's where a good coach can help. Like Josh was talking about being in the trenches, having skin in the game, helping someone look at this and translate it to that. Now, a lot of consulting firms, they're only interested in part A, which is dropping the wisdom. And if they do have some consultants to help you execute, usually they bait and switch it or something like that, and so they're not really experienced. I've always said that a deeply experienced agilist. Now I'm going to go on record for Save. I'll pick that. Everyone knows that I'm not a friend of Save, but I think a deeply experienced Josh, for example, could make sense of Save in a client installation, and he could help guide them. Not with just his safe experience, but with his generic agile experience, and provide that tactical guidance with the client, if and get the culture right on the client, not just the framework right.
Here's the reality. Anybody that has the wherewithal to put their thoughts out on the internet, number one, kudos to them because
Yep,
somebody's not going to like it.
yep.
Like every episode we put out, I'm sure there's people to listen to that like those two dummies. What the heck are they talking about? Right? But that's okay. We aren't asking you to blindly agree with you, but we're sharing what we think and what we believe, and that has a positive effect on the world. So, Marty and anybody that's out there creating content in this space, thank you. But also, part of having your big girl and big boy pants on is people are going to disagree. And that's okay. That happens. We're doing that very lightly here, even. We're just calling out, hey, I disagree with this. Not like, oh, Marty, like you should go back to school or I don't know what people would say, but that's not who we are.
Any other topics on product leadership that, like, we don't have time for 100 of them, Christopher, but is there another burning topic that has some meat on the bone that we did cover that you'd like to throw on the table? Boy, did you like that meat on the bone? Throw it on the table. I am a metaphor
Next,
man
you're going to
today.
stick a fork in it.
Yeah, next. Christopher, anything?
Well, I think we're running into 40 minutes, so
Oh,
Yeah,
damn it.
that above and beyond your
You're channeling your inner Josh Anderson.
job well done. I applaud you. You're
Nicely
hired.
done.
All right, Bob. So the aforementioned fork needs to be stuck.
No, I'd like to do it this way. Can I?
Oh,
Can I propose an experiment?
Mhm.
So
sure.
I want the three of us to think back. I'll give each of us 30 seconds,
Oh,
and then we need to think back, and we have a 30-second elevator pitch or less of what were the key points of this episode. So we're going to get high point, 30-second elevator pitch from each one of us, and I'm not going to go first. I need to think. So
I can
think,
go
and
first.
then
I can go first.
we did trifecta. Go ahead, Josh.
Uh, one of the most effective things you can do in coaching a transformation is have a early frank discussion with the leadership to understand how they're going to receive the challenges that are in front of them. So it's going to be important to present the likely challenges see if they're on board, see how they respond to that. And that will tell you a lot about the likelihood of success for them as a company, but also you and your engagement with them.
Cool. Christopher, what do you got?
Being able to communicate both the nuance of not being overly or underly prescriptive regarding setting the step-by-step how to go about executing it is incredibly difficult when it comes to others' contexts, and conveying that in a written format is very hard.
Cool. And I'll go with, I think product, we started out with product leadership, but in my mind, it quickly went to generic leadership with product aspects. And it's really about solid leadership, maybe in product context when you have a product connection, but solid leadership in general. Trusting your teams is really important. So being an effective product leader is about being an effective leader. Being coachable is something we talked about, and having a strategic alignment, but also tactical alignment. Not just being strategic and buying, sort of frameworks or ideas, but also having the wherewithal to tactically realize that you have to tactically execute them. And then I will wrap up with, it wasn't really said, but the importance of getting good coaches. And that may sound self-serving, but it's really honest in my sense of this is hard stuff or hard shit, and to get right. And good leaders are incredibly comfortable in getting help. So maybe that's the first step.
Nicely done, gentlemen.
All right. So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina,
And beautiful downtown Fuquay Arena, North Carolina.
And beautiful South San Jose.
Nice.
I'm Bob Galen.
I'm Josh Anderson.
I'm Christopher Lee.
Shake
and bake.
And bake. Take care, y'all.